What's the most important step to take if an account gets hacked? Spoiler alert, it's not changing your password. Okay, what YouTube channel with its 15 million subscribers had all of its thousands of videos deleted? What lessons can we learn from their story? What is authentication? Where do we see it in the physical world? And what does it work on? Excuse me. How does it work online? So again, how does it work online? Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick and this is Super Simple Security Principles. Listen each week and learn how to protect yourselves online no matter your skill level. This is episode 33, Keep the Hackers Out, part 3. Today we're talking about authentication, and teaching us about authentication is our master guardian, Makane. Woo!
Hey, Nick. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited for this one, well, for a lot of reasons. The cool story, but also probably my top reason is because we're more directly. I mean, I always try to build these episodes, of course, to answer questions people have in general.
Yeah.
But we very specifically have a question coming up about what is a cookie. And as so often goes, these answers are big. And so this is kind of a prep. This is the first type, or the first part of my answer to answering that question. Our last listener question ended up with 3 full episodes. So we'll see how this next one turns out. But this is in part, and it tied in really well to this series about about keeping hackers out. So that was a cool little tie-in. And anyway, I think it's going to be what feels like a tricky subject, but should be, I think, you'll have to tell me, you'll be our best judge here together, but I'm hopeful that at the end it will feel very understandable and approachable.
Yes.
Okay.
Dude, so I gotta know.
Yeah.
Can we start with that first question? You know, what's the most important step to take if your account gets hacked?
Well,
Where are we
no, not
starting?
really, because basically it relates to the whole concept we're teaching today. And I mean,
Okay.
we could, but it kind of doesn't it doesn't make a lot of sense
Yeah.
until we do the whole episode. So that will really, even though we listed it first, because I think it's one of the more interesting questions and like most practical and useful, like because it happens to people all the time, right? And they want to know. People ask me. I had, in fact, my daughter-in-law called me not long ago, and she had an issue, and it was like, so what do I do now?
Yeah.
And this was one of the steps that I walked her through.
Okay.
But anyway, so yeah,
So hopefully by the
we're
end,
gonna
we're gonna make me answer that question.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So where are we
Yep.
starting then? Where's our starting point?
Well, first I want to get kind of a gauge on how you feel about the word authentication to kind of see how our listeners might be feeling. Because to me,
All
I
right.
thought it would probably be pretty scary based on my experience with people, but I don't know. I just wanted to see where your mind is there.
Look, when I hear authentication, I think in my mind, I visualize this button that I got to press. Then I am who I say I am. Click. You know, that's how I think of it. But then again, how do you authenticate who you are online? You know,
Yeah.
so uh, I've heard of people
Okay.
going in and authenticating like old, valuable things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that with this authentication, there's going to be something that's similar, or at least works similar, that there's someone or something that says this is who they say they are, or it is what it says it is.
Yeah. No, that's a good example. Well, and so that's kind of one of the big premises here and where we're going to start is that we don't necessarily understand online authentication, but we all deal with many, many different varieties of authentication in the physical world.
Yeah.
And so even though we don't necessarily always think about it as authentication in the physical world, in reality, the concept is very, very familiar to every adult at least. And so it doesn't have to be scary. And then it takes just a few extra points to take what we understand about the physical world authentication and apply those lessons to online. And so it doesn't have to be scary. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. I
Okay.
don't like scary.
So, yeah. Well, and we've talked about authentication with several metaphors in the past. Even we've talked about as keys to storage units. We've
Yeah.
talked about them as hotel keys sitting back behind the desk. That you could go all steal, right?
Right.
So we're going to add one more to our list, and there will be more to come too, because it helps us kind of analyze different aspects of it. And the
Yeah.
one we're going to bring in today is hotel key cards.
Okay.
And I chose them because they have two distinct types of authentication, each with a different method and purpose. So my first question, now my next question for you, Nick, is: does anything jump out at you as obvious to me, or obvious to you, excuse me, what those two types are? Just
No.
knowing that it's hotel key cards? Okay. I
No.
wasn't sure. Right. So the
No.
first is when you first arrive at the hotel and you're getting checked in.
Right.
You have to prove that you're the human who paid for a hotel room.
Right.
Right? They might check your ID, check your card, maybe you pay there, whatever that is, right? But it's done by a human, and that you have authorization to, stay in the hotel.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second is, at that point, they're going to give you a key card. Right?
Right.
And so every time you need to get in your room, there is a little scanner that key card you use to scan into your room. Right? So that authentication is done by a little card reader, and it's basically implied proof. It doesn't know that you are you, because somebody could steal your key card, right?
Right. Right.
But obviously you can't have a person stationed outside every hotel room checking to make sure that the person going in is authenticated, authorized to go into that room, right?
Right.
And so that's the balance that we strike in the physical world with hotels. We have the human authentication when you first get there that we're careful about. We make sure is more bulletproof than the hotel key card. But then we have the convenience. And so anyway, those are the two different purposes.
Gotcha.
That makes sense?
Makes sense. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, and if you think about it, you talk about authenticating valuables, and there's other, and we won't dive into all these, but I just want to kind of bring them up to conjure up just how much familiarity we really have with authentication. When we go to the airport, you show your passport and you get a boarding pass, right? A boarding pass is a mini type of authentication that you do when you actually go through the gate and board the plane, right?
Right. Right.
At an amusement park, you might get a stamp on your wrist or a wristband.
Right.
That's another type of authentication. There's employee name tags or uniforms.
Yeah.
Right? Or like when there was a place I worked at that I actually had sort of like a hotel key card, but it was an employee key card. So I had it basically for the whole time I worked there, that let me work the elevator to get up to the floor that I worked on. Most people couldn't go there, and then to get in the doors, of course, too.
Right.
So anyway, there's so many examples of it.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, like I could think of a couple myself too.
Yeah. Any others that I didn't list?
Oh, I like going to baseball fields. So you got your tickets, you got to authenticate. Yeah.
Yep. That's an important one for you, for sure. Yep. Okay. So, we ready to look at how it works online then a little bit?
Yeah, let's check it out.
Okay, so the most common and familiar one, of course, is logging into a website.
Right.
And it has some very interesting similarities to hotel keycards because, again, there's two distinct types. That's why I chose hotel keycards, right? The
Yeah.
first is when you get on and you enter your username and password. That's like
Right.
checking into the hotel, right? You're logging into your account. So you get into, say your email. We'll use that for our example.
Yeah.
But of course, every email you click on and as you move around, you don't have to keep entering your password every time,
Right.
right?
Right.
How does that work? Why don't you?
That's a good point.
Right?
I logged in
Right.
once.
And
Like, I'm thinking of a website, like I log in once and then I go do everything outside of those few timed sessions that you have. Oh, did I hit
session.
on? Yeah.
Session. That's the word, right? There's a notion, right? We all are familiar with it. We don't always know the name, although you did, so that's cool. But right, I mean, and each website is very different on how long those sessions last, right? Sometimes you can
Right.
leave your computer, come back the next day, months, and like you never have to enter your password again, right?
Right. Right.
And some are more like, no, we're going to make you do it every week or whatever. There's a whole range of approaches, but this idea is like in the hotel, however long you're booked for a room, your hotel key card stays good. That's the equivalent of a session online.
Okay. All right.
And the mechanics of how that works, we're going to dive into a little bit more when we get to the cookie. But
Yeah.
cookies play a role in these sessions.
Okay.
They're part of how they like the mechanics of how it's accomplished. Is cookies are required in order to make sessions work in how the internet architecture works. Like if we got rid of cookies, we'd have to find some other way to manage these sessions.
Okay. So cookies
So,
keep these sessions going.
well, they're part of it, okay? Because and
Okay.
there's so cookies serve multiple different purposes, and that's what
Yeah.
we'll talk about then. But
Okay.
that's this is a critical piece of one. So it's not just a matter of let's get rid of cookies because they they do some things that people don't want, but they also do a lot of things that people do want.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, okay. So, let's see. Session 1 you understood really well. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is the story
Yeah.
that we referenced.
I'm intrigued. Let's hear about it. Dude, 15
Yeah,
million
so
subscribers is no joke. That's a huge following. Huge
yeah.
following.
And I'm guessing this one you haven't heard of, although it's anyway, it's called Linus Tech Tips.
Linus Tech Tips. Okay.
And they talk about, so actually, when I actually read their tagline, I wrote it down because I thought it was kind of interesting. They are a passionate team of professionally curious experts, they put in quotes, in consumer technology and video production who aim to educate and entertain. So they talk about tech subjects, about what, gaming monitors, but it's definitely, it's not geared at computer geeks or software
Okay.
developers. Like it's kind of a any person target
Any person.
audience. And they definitely have a blend of like they're trying to educate, but they also like to entertain. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But they're a fun channel that I watch sometimes. In March of this year, they got hacked.
Okay.
And I can't remember the numbers, but I mean, it is definitely, they have a massive, it is thousands of videos. And every single one got nuked.
Oh, all that
Yeah.
work. Dude, I feel for him. Holy cow.
Yeah, and Linus, the head guy, there's a whole team, but Linus is the main dude, and he discovered, I think, during the middle of the night. They have a whole video, like they obviously got all their videos back, otherwise we wouldn't know about it. And they detailed the story themselves in great detail and owned up to all their issues. They also talked about what issues, Google has, what
Mm.
failings, because Google owns YouTube, and there were some legitimate complaints they had about Google and YouTube's policies that we'll see a little bit more in a second. But anyway, they got all their videos back, and they recorded videos about all that stuff.
Okay.
And there's tons of interesting details, and we're not going to go into all that. We're just, you can go look it up and read it if you want. In fact, I should put a link in the show notes for it, because it is pretty fun, I think. But we're just going to focus on one tiny detail.
You call it fun. I'm sure their
Well,
phrasing would have been much different.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, fun to listen to, right, and hear about.
Ah,
And
there you go.
maybe even that's a stretch. I don't know. I'm not sure. But like, they do try to do it in an entertaining way,
Okay.
and like Linus, they kind of have part of the video blurred out, because I mean, it looks like he got up, like he rolled out of bed, and he's like naked. I think he even says in the video, so it has it covered anyway. Like, they're trying to make it not just teach you. I mean, they try to teach you some legitimate things about what happened, but trying to
Okay.
be entertaining about it as well. Anyway,
I'll have to
so
check it out.
the one tiny detail that's relevant to ours today is tying back to the hotel key cards, right? Because
Right.
what they talk about is, after they realized they had been hacked, what did they do first? They changed their password,
Ah,
right? And
right.
then they thought everything was going to be fine. They got all their videos restored, but then all their videos got nuked again. This was
That's
after they
because
changed their password.
that session was still open, right?
Yep.
And they were able to go in and nuke it again because that session hadn't been closed.
Yep. That's exactly
Ah,
right. Yep.
gotcha.
Yeah. The hotel key cards did not get deactivated.
Right.
And that's part of where Linus started, had some complaints about Google, like, well, maybe if, thousands of videos got deleted and restored, this might be a clue that maybe there's something going on. Or even just asking, like, sometimes even if you're logged in, if you try to do certain things, it asks for your password again, right? As kind of
Right.
a sanity check. Nuking thousands of videos from your own YouTube channel, that might be a good idea to ask for your password again. Anyway, those kinds of things.
Yeah. No, that's
But
makes sense. Perfect sense, actually.
here's the reason why they didn't, I think, anyway. There's no official policy on this, but my speculation and Linus's is just like, is they don't want much friction for people coming to watch YouTube. Like, how often do you have to relog into your Google account to watch
Yeah,
YouTube videos?
that's
Not
true.
very often.
That is true. That is true. And it would be frustrating signing in and out if you're just sitting there trying to peruse watching videos.
Yep. Yeah,
Hmm.
and that's how it is with social media in general, because they really want you there and engaged, and so they tend to be very lax in terms of a session expiration. Now, there's some good compromise that they can do here in this case that I'm hoping by now Google has put in place. Linus has a big enough voice that I'm hoping that
Yeah.
they've made, because they're really not that hard to fix, some of those things. So hopefully some of these issues, because, and one, according to Linus too, he's far from the first story too. He was just big enough that he was able to get Google on the horn too, and
Really.
get some personal assistance. But there have been other smaller ones that have had issues. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But so the
Fascinating.
lesson, though, yeah, it is. I think so. That's why I keep getting distracted because it's a very interesting story to me, but it's not really the whole point of today's episode. I mean, it's to definitely highlight the main thing that we want to learn about today, right? Is
Right.
sessions.
Right.
And
Well,
that, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just think about hotel keys. I'm going back to your analogy. Have you ever stayed at a hotel and had a late checkout? I've had
Mm,
late checkouts multiple times and my key card has expired. go to click back into the room, maybe we're loading up a vehicle or something and I'm taking multiple trips out to the car and I've gone up and the key card hasn't worked. And I've had to go back down and say, nope, I'm still here. Let me back in, kind of a hassle, but at least I know that the next person that gets my room key card, it isn't going to work on my room, and hopefully I'm long checked out by then too.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that additional detail. That makes good sense. I'm glad it seems like it's connecting then pretty well,
Yeah.
this idea of sessions. So the main lesson is turns out really simple at this point, right? Getting back to that initial question. And it's that you want to make sure that if you have any concerns, if you got hacked or you even think you did, then what you can do is for any big account, any of the big tech accounts, Google, Facebook, and you can go log in, go to the security settings in section, and there will be a list of places that you are logged in, all the sessions that are,
Okay.
and you can review them. They'll tell you like a little bit of information about where the device is, physical location as much as it can tell, because it can determine that to some degree. And if there's any that do not look familiar, then you want to log them out.
Gotcha.
Now, the moment that's done, while you're still inside your account settings, you should definitely be changing the password as well. We've been talking about sessions, so that was the emphasis, but just to be clear, like changing your password is just as important. It's just you really got to do both. You got to go log out those sessions, change your password. So it's not that the changing your password is less important. It was just kind of, that's one that most people recognize and do. And so I really wanted to highlight the session part of it, because most people I know aren't even aware of the need to do it, let alone
I wasn't.
actually do it.
You're basically going to jump into your account. If I understand this, let's go.
Yep.
Let's say account's compromised. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to log in. I'm going to check what sessions are open. If all of a sudden I've got one on my phone that I recognize, but I've got various others that I don't, close those, then reset my password. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting it. Yes.
Yeah. And it's that simple, but it's really and that's why I shared the story, because it's simple, but it's so critical.
Really, that's it. I nailed it that quickly.
Yep.
So I want to jump into what's our call to action, because what's our call to action should be super simple.
Well,
right?
I think we're ready, because I think we've answered all the questions.
I think so. So
Okay.
What's our call to action? Can I guess? Are we going to go close some sessions?
Well, yeah, essentially, not necessarily, right? But I want to have you do it right now, right? Practice this, right? Ahead of time. Make sure you go pick, and my suggestion is do it with your email account, because as we've talked about many times, that's the most important.
Yeah.
And so go log into your email account, make sure you can find the place where those sessions are.
Yeah.
And yes, actually legitimately review them this time. And hopefully you recognize them all. Although for me, sometimes, like, I have a computer. I've had cases where like it's a really old computer that I even don't have anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sometimes there's old sessions that it remembers, and sometimes they get logged out. They might list them, and sometimes they'll say that it's a logged in session or an expired session. So anyway, but yeah, review it and definitely log anything out that looks suspicious. Again, like I said, hopefully not, but that way, if you do have it, you already practiced it when your brain's working well. And if you have any problems, you can reach out to us on the forum for help if you're unable to find it or have questions about it or whatever. But yeah, practice. Log in your email account, practice, and make sure you know how to log out your sessions. So you'll just remember to do it, right? When you have a problem. So
yes.
Yep. So that's
there you have it. There you have it. That was a fantastic episode, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I think so. I'm just glad we were able to get to the point where you understood it. So I mean, you were calling out session very quickly and everything. So hopefully, same will be true for our listeners.
Yeah. I've seen it enough on the internet to know that, okay, I know what a session is, or at least
Yeah.
understand that it's going to boot me if I'm inactive after a while.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, and that's good evidence that yeah, it's familiar. We just got to connect a few dots, and
yeah.
so okay.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay. That's our super simple show today. If you're not a member of the IHP Academy already, please come join us for free. Stop searching the whole internet for answers and never knowing who to trust. Ask us instead. We made it super simple to find us, and it only takes 2 minutes to sign up. Just visit helpmegetsafe.com. Enter your name and your email. You're in. You can also find the link in our show notes. Thank you for joining us, and make it a great day. Bye-bye.